Genesis chapter 2. Let's talk about Adam, Eve, the Garden of Eden, and of course we're going to talk about free will. The Bible tells us in chapter 2 of Genesis that God had ended all his work, the creation of the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested. So he blessed and sanctified the seventh day. Also gives us a description of how he created the man. Everything before the man, God created it with his word. Now the Bible tells us that from the dust of the ground he created the man. So basically God got his hands dirty. He took clay from the ground and he formed, he shaped, he created the man. And the Bible tells us that after that he breathed into his nostrils the spirit of life, and after that the man became a living being. And then the Bible tells us that at the creation toward the east, God planted a garden, the garden that we now know as the Garden of Eden. And in that garden God planted all kind of trees, but there were two trees that he planted in that garden that are special. Number one, the tree of life, okay, even though I think the man was going to live forever, but nonetheless he planted the tree of life there. And he also planted right in the middle of the garden, he planted the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now after he planted this tree there, he spoke with Adam and gave him a commandment. He said, Adam, you can eat from all the trees that are in the garden. However, you should not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because if you do so, you surely die. So he's telling, don't eat from that tree of knowledge of good and evil because you will die. So the whole thing about planting that garden there and then giving the man the commandment, it was simply so man can choose. So God gave him the option, the free will of choosing. Okay, so God didn't create a robot, so God created a man, a human, to be able to choose to love him, to obey his commandments. That's why that tree was planted there, and that's why the commandment came forward. So now the man also had the option to choose. Okay, so that was interesting. Also, the Bible tells us in chapter 2 that Adam named all the animals that you see nowadays. He named the lion, the tiger, the giraffe. But while they were going through that whole process, God was bringing the animals to Adam, and Adam was naming them. The Bible tells us that there was no suitable help. There was nothing comparable that was found for Adam through that whole entire process. So now what God does, God creates the rib. In other words, God says, well, since we can't find something that is suitable for you, we're going to create woman. So the Bible tells us that God put Adam to sleep, cut him on the side, grabbed one of his ribs, and then out of that rib, God created the woman. God created Eve. And then when Adam saw her, he said, okay, now this is bones of my bones and flesh of my flesh. Toward the end of the chapter, we can see that God instituted for the very first time the marriage, because he told the man that he shall leave his mother and father and become united with his wife in one flesh. So he gave him the commandment to get married, pretty much, become together. And then toward the end of the chapter, the Bible tells us that both the man and the wife were both naked, and they were not embarrassed or ashamed in each other's presence. Everything at that point, up to that point, everything seemed perfect, beautiful, a fairy tale. So that's chapter 2 for you in less than 5 minutes.